Let's go to Ramallah in the occupied West Bank and speak to Xavier Abu Eid, the political scientist, also a former communications advisor to the PLO. Welcome to the program, Xavier. Look, Israel rejected the last American ceasefire proposal. Apparently the Qataris and the Egyptians, the mediators, were infuriated because the rejection by Israel was of exactly the same text that Tel Aviv had previously agreed. What do you think is different this time? Why is Donald Trump saying a deal is going to be done?
Thank you, Adnan. To be very honest, I don't know. And I think many people should be very cautious about what U.S. officials are saying and what Israeli officials say. Now, the information I have is that clearly over the past hours, there has been progress. The Egyptian and Qatari diplomacy, as you have said, they have been working against the clock, and as well Witkoff, who is the U.S. envoy. Now, eventually, one big question that we have is what could have made Benjamin Netanyahu change his mind? And I think that's where this whole new discussion doesn't make much sense for me. But I truly hope, Adnan, that I'm mistaken. Why? Because the main priority now should be to end this genocide and to prevent the new ethnic cleansing of about 1 million people from Gaza City.
Xavier, what do you know about Hamas's position regarding the future governance of Gaza? Because both the Americans and even some European countries are saying the same as Israel, that whatever happens to Gaza in the future, Hamas cannot be involved.
Adnan, let's be very clear. If this whole thing was about getting rid of Hamas, Israel could do this through negotiations. And Hamas, by the way, they have been very clear that they are willing to accept a technocratic government or even the Palestinian Authority going back to Gaza in the context of an agreement that, of course, involves a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. So if it was about getting rid of Hamas, I think they can do this through negotiations, at least Hamas in Gaza. If it was about returning the captives that are in Gaza, you also have the opportunity to have an agreement. And actually, there was a deal, a ceasefire, that exchanged prisoners and captives from Gaza and from the occupation jails. And it was Israel, let's remember a few months ago, that they broke the ceasefire and took us to the situation where we are. And here, Adnan, it's I think, the main issue. Because the goal, if it is not about getting rid of Hamas or returning the captives as a first goal, then it remains what most of the Israeli cabinet are talking about, which is a mass expulsion of Palestinians to make Palestinians leave Gaza. And if that happens, if they succeed, I think that's a very strategic part of the story. It's not just about the huge humanitarian catastrophe, the famine we're facing in Gaza City and towards the south, but it's also about what's going to happen next year as well in the occupied West Bank.
Okay, and therefore, do you think because of the future that you're talking about, there needs to be more Arab involvement? Xavier, we're talking about Israel, we're talking about the EU, we're talking about the United States. We almost never talk about what initiatives the Arab nations are taking.
It is a point that many people have been talking about. I think it's very important, and that you're raising it. We have to talk about, first of all, two countries that have been at the top of the efforts to reach a ceasefire, which is Qatar and Egypt. We have to talk also about the calls of Jordan that has a very strategic interest here, because as I was saying, there is also a concern that there will be a mass displacement of Palestinians from the occupied West Bank to Jordan if things continue like they are now in Gaza. And I think also there is a very important point with regards to the countries that have normalized relations with Israel, particularly the United Arab Emirates, that over the past days have been sending messages that they may withdraw from the Abraham Accords or the normalization agreements if Israel announces a formal annexation of the occupied West Bank. Now, I think it's very important, Adnan, to remember that in effect there is an annexation in the occupied West Bank. This is what the International Court of Justice said last year, and therefore people are still waiting to see a stronger response from certain Arab countries.
Xavier Abu Eid, thank you so much for the analysis.